You didn't stumble across this message. You were guided here. This is your confirmation. Not just a sign, but a moment carved out in time just for you. Because deep down, you know it too. Something inside is shifting. The way you think, feel, move. It's changing. That's not random. That's alignment. You're not crazy, dramatic, or too much. You're awakening. And here's the truth. No one says loud enough. Not everyone gets to walk this path. Not everyone has the courage to outgrow their past, face their shadows, and rise above the noise. But you do. You're not here to blend in. You're here to break patterns, to elevate, to lead. So if you've felt different, distant, disconnected lately, it's not because you're falling behind. It's because you're leveling up. You're stepping into a new frequency, a new power, and the world won't always understand it, but your soul does. This is your moment, your shift, your sign. Step into it like you were born for it, because you were. You emerge from the depths, not with ash on your skin, but with vision in your stride. While others remain entangled in familiar echoes, your rhythm has shifted. There's no proclamation, no need for explanation. Your transformation pulses in your silence. What stirs within you is not imagination, it's revelation. Eyes track you differently now. Space forms between you and what once felt close. For some, that distance rattles hidden walls they never planned to face. This evolution isn't for impact, it's for survival. This isn't casual viewing. It's a coded transmission for those aligned with higher resonance. If the energy here strikes something true, you already know. It's not about comments or numbers, but recognition in your soul's core. You've begun to outgrow the outline of your past self, and that dissonance unsettles those who thought they understood your script. Not every viewer will make it to the end. Only those tuned beyond surface noise will absorb the frequency behind the form. This is more than a message. It's a layered signal. With each return, it peels back another layer, opening gates you never saw until now. You are not here by accident. If you feel the pull, the knowing deep inside that you were chosen, this is your moment. Click the super thank you button and give $50 or more to unlock deeper insights, exclusive content, and a path that aligns with your divine purpose. This isn't just a contribution, it's a declaration, a step toward who you were meant to be. Answer the call, walk with us, and step fully into your destiny. Your journey begins now. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Some truths don't come in thunder. Some arrive like whispers that won't let you sleep. And just like a snake must shed its skin to survive, there comes a time when your spirit says, enough. Not because you're bitter, not because you're broken, but because you're finally awake. That old skin you once wore, people-pleasing, overgiving, over-explaining, was never your true self. It was just the layer you thought you had to wear to be loved, to be safe, to belong. Let me tell you something, beloved. God didn't create you to be molded by other people's limitations. You weren't born to live on your knees to someone else's comfort. The same way Moses couldn't stay in Pharaoh's palace once his calling found him. You couldn't keep playing small when your purpose started calling louder than your fear. There was a season, oh yes, we all have them, where you let others define your value. You gave and gave, hoping someone would see the beauty of your heart. You loved people who only loved your silence. You showed up for those who never stayed. You poured yourself out into vessels that couldn't hold water, hoping they'd one day recognize your worth. And when they didn't, you thought it was you. You thought if you could just do more, be more, love harder, it would finally be enough. But here's the truth. It was never you. You didn't lack value. You lacked boundaries. You weren't too much. They were too small to hold your spirit. You weren't broken. You were just surrounded by people who benefited from your brokenness. They didn't love you. They loved your obedience. They didn't cherish your soul. They enjoyed your compliance. Because as long as you didn't question, as long as you stayed soft, quiet, agreeable, they could keep their grip on you. They called your silence kindness. They called your tolerance grace. But what they really loved was control. You confused being wanted with being seen. You mistook being needed for being valued. And you wore your loyalty like a crown, even as it drained the life from you. You sacrificed yourself at altars built by people who would never bleed for you. But baby, hear me, Jesus already bled for you. You don't have to bleed for anyone else's approval. When you started to wake up, oh, it was subtle at first, you noticed the shift. You felt the ache in your spirit when you said yes, but meant no. You felt the sting when your kindness was mistaken for weakness. And eventually, you got tired. Not just physically tired, but soul tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of being the peacemaker while you lived in a war zone. Tired of dimming your light so others wouldn't feel exposed. Then came the moment where your eyes opened, not just to them, but to you, to who you are, to who you've always been, to who God created you to be before the world told you otherwise. And in that sacred moment, the illusion shattered, not with rage, but with clarity, not with vengeance, but with vision. And you realized you weren't losing anything. You were finally letting go of being the fixer, letting go of being the emotional sponge, letting go of living your life in reaction to everyone else's expectations. You were never meant to be their project. You were never meant to be their silent support system. You are not their comfort object. You are not their emotional ATM. You are a child of the Most High. You are a living, breathing, walking temple of divine strength. And no one has the right to redefine what God already called good. Listen, they may say you've changed. Let them. They may call you cold. Let them. They may whisper about your boundaries like their betrayal. Let them. You're not the same. And that's the miracle. You've been transformed. You've been renewed. And like the caterpillar in the cocoon, your stillness wasn't weakness. It was preparation. You were never stuck. You were becoming. They don't like the butterfly because they only knew the crawl. They don't know what to do with your wings because they only learned to love you grounded. But guess what? You don't owe anyone your wingspan. You don't owe anyone your healing. You don't owe anyone your softness at the expense of your soul. You no longer sit at tables where you have to serve and starve at the same time. You no longer apologize for needing rest, space, peace. You no longer water desserts, hoping they'll turn into gardens. And that shift, it scares them, because your new self makes them question their old patterns. Your clarity makes their confusion uncomfortable. Your healing makes their dysfunction undeniable. But hear me, you didn't come this far to go back. You didn't awaken just to fall asleep again. You didn't do all this inner work just to squeeze back into a life that couldn't hold you. You've been stretched for more. You've been refined through fire. And now you carry something holy, a peace that cannot be stolen. They don't have to understand it. They don't have to like it. They don't even have to stay. Because this version of you, this whole, healed and rising version, was never meant to be palatable. You were meant to be powerful. You were meant to be free. So walk like it, speak like it, decide like it. and never again shrink to fit a version of yourself that was only meant to survive, not soar. You didn't just change, you were reborn, and the world hasn't even seen the half of what's coming from you yet. Now is the moment to share God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube. With a donation of $100 or more, you can actively participate in His divine mission and contribute to His greater plan. Every offering you make reflects the boundless generosity of God, and I trust it will return to you abundantly, far exceeding your hopes. Always remember, His protection and blessing accompany your every step and every act of giving. You are a vital part of His sacred design. You are strong and radiant, steadfast like His mighty rock. Experience God's miracles. Feel the rewards of your generosity deep within your soul, and shine your light with boldness and faith. May you be richly blessed, and may the light of the Lord continually guide your journey. No longer driven by the need to be validated, the path now unfolds from a place of inner command. The era of chasing connection through self-betrayal ends. No more offering your essence as a bargaining chip for temporary inclusion. No more molding yourself to fit into frames designed to shrink you. What once felt like loyalty now reveals itself as self-abandonment in disguise. Affirmation becomes an offering, not an obligation. Refusal stands as a declaration, not a disruption. Quiet no longer means absence. It becomes a force of its own. Familiar dynamics begin to fall apart, not because you attack them, but because you've stopped anchoring them. You no longer orbit around expectations rooted in your silence. You don't cushion false narratives. You don't rehearse your truth until it sounds acceptable. You don't stay where your essence is tolerated more than it's honored. Clarity now weighs more than closeness. Stillness holds more value than approval. The decision to guard your internal harmony becomes your baseline, not a moment of rebellion. And the unrest this brings others isn't your burden. It's their reckoning. You no longer fold into comfort zones that demanded your muting. You no longer nod through discomfort. You no longer take on emotional residue that isn't yours. What once had a hold can't find a grip anymore. The script dissolves because you've stopped reciting it. Their confusion isn't your concern. What you carry now can't be mapped, measured, or manipulated, and that makes you a disruption to every space that relied on your silence to stay intact. You recognize now, and that recognition unlocks everything. They were more comfortable when you were easier to define, when your complexity stayed quiet and your essence stayed dimmed. Simplicity gives others a false sense of certainty, and certainty feels like control. Once they decide what you're allowed to be, they stop listening. They build entire stories around versions of you that no longer exist, trying to hold your identity hostage to their expectations. It's not really about knowing you, it's about taming the parts of you they can't understand. But the version they built their comfort on no longer lives here. You're no longer echoing their projections, no longer holding back just to fit into a narrative you never wrote. That past version of you, the one who stayed quiet, played small, and wore guilt like a second skin, has dissolved. They're haunted by the memory of your passivity, not prepared for the presence of your power. They preferred you as a mirror that never reflected truth. Now your capacity stretches beyond familiar outlines. Internal shifts have made the old dynamics feel tight, irrelevant, too shallow. The way you carry yourself has changed. Not louder, but clearer. You no longer need to justify your movement, nor soften your truth to protect others' denial. Sometimes integrity looks like stillness. Sometimes love requires distance. Sometimes healing means not being who they remember, and when they can't trace your patterns, they blame your growth for their discomfort. But evolution doesn't ask permission. The work you've done reveals their refusal to begin. As you reinforce your boundaries, their lack of them becomes unavoidable. Your calm presence becomes a spotlight on all they've hidden from themselves. This shift isn't betrayal. It's a return. You don't rise to disturb them. You rise because staying low started to cost you pieces of yourself. And now that you've reclaimed them, nothing familiar can contain you. The old frame collapses not from violence, but because truth has weight. And you finally let it speak. Not everyone can keep up with a soul that refuses to stay in rehearsal. Growth shifts your rhythm, your response, your very presence, and that unsettles those who found comfort in your former limitations. They may deny it, they may mock it, they may twist your change into betrayal. But transformation was always part of your design, and guilt has no place in that unfolding. The more you evolve, the less recognizable you become to those who only knew the version of you still trying to belong. Now they scramble to decode you using outdated tools, trying to interpret your expansion through the lens of your past. It fails, because what's unfolding in you isn't meant to be simplified or packaged. It's fluid, untamed, and alive. You're no longer shrinking to make space for their discomfort. You're no longer dimming your radiance to soothe insecurities. Movement is your nature, and stillness is only sacred when it aligns with truth, not when it's demanded for the sake of someone else's illusion. What they grasp for no longer exists. You stepped out of the projection and into your own presence. That presence disrupts anything built on assumption, because living in truth always rattles those hiding behind roles. There's something disarming about standing near someone who has dared to meet themselves fully. The weight of inner work, of choosing presence over pretending, of turning pain into clarity, it shifts the atmosphere. You don't need to announce who you've become. It's in the way your energy doesn't bend, in the way you release what once defined you, in the way silence holds your boundaries now. Your evolution reflects like clean glass, unforgiving, clear, and sharp enough to reveal what others try to bury. You don't speak against them, but your choices echo loudly. The contrast between your healing and their hiding grows too stark to ignore. And so, some leave, some go quiet, some throw shade, hoping it will cast doubt on your path. But none of it is about you. It's about what they haven't faced within themselves. You didn't rise to shame them. You rose to breathe, to reclaim space within your own skin. And when you no longer resemble the version they could control, the story they built around you crumbles. They'll say you've changed. You have. That was always the point. It's not about being above anyone. It's about no longer choosing ease over growth. You move differently now, not because you think you're more, but because you're finally done settling for less. The decision to break cycles that ran in silence for years didn't come from pride. It came from pain. You faced what others avoided. You confronted inherited wounds, gave voice to buried grief, and walked out of patterns disguised as normal. While some stayed safely numb, you let it all rise. And that choice changed everything. Comfort never demanded transformation. Familiarity never asked for truth. But you wanted more than survival. So you chose freedom, even when it cost you applause. And now that your path has narrowed, don't be surprised if some fall away. It's not loss, it's refinement. You're not clinging to what feels good. You're aligning with what feels real. And in that alignment, only those tuned to your frequency remain. The ones confused by your evolution were never meant to build with your future. You're no longer echoing the noise you once mistook for connection. There was a time when empty dialogue felt like release, when friction passed for closeness, when distractions gave temporary relief from what you weren't ready to face. You once tolerated shallow waters to avoid swimming alone, but you've outgrown what doesn't nourish. Your spirit now pulls towards substance. Conversations without intention exhaust you. Performative connection feels hollow, and anything that lacks depth fades before it touches you. Where you're headed requires sharper focus, quieter surroundings, and deeper exchanges. You guard your attention like sacred ground, knowing it feeds the clarity behind every decision. You no longer waste it on circles of talk that spiral into nothing. It's not that you're distant, it's that your time has become a sanctuary. And those still clinging to the noise may feel shut out, but the truth is, they're just no longer at the center of your orbit. It's not rejection, it's protection. The emotional static, the drained moments, the self-abandonment masked as being polite, all of that had to end. You didn't shift to hurt anyone, you shifted to heal. And when you stopped offering your energy to what couldn't grow with you, those who benefited from your silence took it personally. Let them. You don't owe guilt for choosing peace. You don't owe apologies for evolving. The further you rise, the clearer it becomes. What once passed for connection was sometimes just shared pain. Now, you choose resonance over routine. You're not a background voice in chaos anymore. You're the signal that cuts through it, and that truth alone changes everything. There was a time when the sound of your own silence felt unbearable, when being liked felt like safety, and being chosen meant survival. You stretched yourself thin, shifted your tone, censored your truth, just to remain in good graces. You wore masks stitched from fear of rejection, shrinking into roles that never belonged to you. Approval became your compass, and without it, you felt lost. In seeking acceptance, you handed over pieces of your identity, one compromise at a time. But something irreversible ignited within. You stopped waiting for permission to feel whole. You turned inward and discovered your voice had always been the authority you were searching for. Not louder, but more honest. Not hardened, but deeply rooted. You began to honor yourself not as a reaction to others' opinions, but as a return to your original essence. That shift was quiet, but seismic. You no longer needed applause to confirm your path, and those who once held power through your dependence could feel it slipping. Their tactics, subtle guilt, shifting blame, veiled demands, don't land anymore. The emotional currency they once used is now worthless in your presence. This evolution unsettles them, not because you've changed out of spite, but because you stopped being malleable. You don't seek validation, you embody it. You don't chase what depletes, you attract what resonates. What used to sway you now bounces off the foundation you've built from within. Their confusion isn't your responsibility. Their resentment isn't your weight. You walk with certainty now, not as a declaration of superiority, but as a quiet knowing. You've made peace with not being understood, with being misread, with being too much or not enough in someone else's eyes. What matters is how deeply you see yourself. You're not perfect, you're present. You're not trying to impress, you're aligned. That alignment ripples into everything, your choices, your relationships, your energy. And when you show up in rooms where unspoken pain lingers, you don't need to say a word. Your presence becomes a pulse that disrupts what's been hidden. The stillness you carry exposes what noise used to distract from. The ones who avoid their own healing feel unsteady around you, not because you provoke, but because you reflect. Your peace confronts their chaos. Your boundaries reveal their patterns. Your wholeness makes their denial harder to defend. It's not aggression, it's resonance. You're not seeking control. You've reclaimed your center. That's what shakes them. You no longer engage in the drama, the tug-of-war, the endless explaining. You simply stand, anchored, open, free. The version of you that once needed saving no longer answers the door. You've outgrown the narrative that required your silence to maintain harmony. You are no longer at war with yourself to keep the peace with others. And that one truth, lived fully, changes everything. Now is the moment to share God's blessings by clicking the Super Thank You button on YouTube. With a donation of $100 or more, you can actively participate in His divine mission and contribute to His greater plan. Every offering you make reflects the boundless generosity of God, and I trust it will return to you abundantly, far exceeding your hopes. Always remember, His protection and blessing accompany your every step and every act of giving. You are a vital part of His sacred design. You are strong and radiant, steadfast like His mighty rock. Experience God's miracles, feel the rewards of your generosity deep within your soul, and shine your light with boldness and faith. May you be richly blessed, and may the light of the Lord continually guide your journey. What you carry unsettles those still hiding from their own awakening. There's a tension in the room when your energy arrives, not because of who you appear to be, but because of what your essence reveals. You don't confront, you illuminate, and in that quiet exposure, buried weight begins to rise in others. What was hidden beneath layers of comfort, avoidance, and habit now finds itself reflected in your presence. Not through conflict, but through contrast. You don't need to explain. The shift happens because you exist as a reminder that growth is real, that healing isn't a theory, it's lived, that freedom isn't given, it's claimed. The discomfort they feel, it's not about what you've done, it's about the shadows they've kept company with for too long. You've stepped into yourself fully, and that fullness pierces spaces where illusion once felt safe. So when you encounter resistance, don't internalize it. You are not the cause, you are the catalyst. What no longer belongs to you cannot claim you. You're not bound by echoes of an older identity. You're not trapped by roles others once relied on. What remains now is your unwavering clarity. The strength of your spirit acts like a tremor through old foundations. You shake, not because you force, because you simply refuse to dim. Where you are now is the result of choosing truth over comfort, depth over performance. You didn't reach this place for approval. You arrived here out of necessity. Burnout taught you what peace is. Repetition showed you what freedom costs. You didn't break to impress. You broke to rebuild. Honestly, intentionally, and completely. The way you move now carries intention. No longer weighed down by what others project onto you, you step with purpose. You speak not to be accepted, but because silence is no longer your cage. Your decisions aren't for spectacle, they're sacred. You've become too expansive for spaces built on limitation. Some won't understand it, some won't want to. That's okay. Those who can't handle your presence aren't being rejected, they're being revealed. When you stop playing roles, when you stop softening truth for someone else's comfort, the reaction isn't always gratitude, it's fear. Not everyone wants to meet who you've become. Some preferred the version of you that made no waves, asked no questions, followed the script. Let them stay where they are if they choose. You didn't rise for applause. You rose because you were called, and that calling keeps expanding you. You owe no explanation for your clarity, no apology for your glow. The further you walk in integrity, the more your past selves fall away, and with them, the attachments that kept you anchored in survival. Your transformation is not just about personal freedom, it becomes a signpost for others, watching quietly, wondering if they can rise too. Let them see it's possible. Let your growth be the echo that stirs sleeping spirits. Let your presence speak what your words never need to explain. You've already proven everything necessary just by becoming.